I'm here with Thomas Gass. He's the Assistant Secretary General of the UN Department for Economic and Social Affairs. Welcome to the German Development Institute.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here.
Well, thank you so much. 2 weeks ago, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with the new and Universal Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, was adopted by the UN Summit in New York City. And you were at the summit and you were involved in the whole process of the SDGs. So how does it feel to have been part of such a historic event?
It was a really very special moment for us all. You know, I've been a practitioner of development cooperation over, the last 20 years or so. And when you grow up with log frames, and I think in Germany you call that zielorientierte Projektplanung, when you grow up with that in your veins, then you always look for three priorities, you always look for a strategic plan to move forward. Well, this is different. You had 193 countries, you had civil society, you had other interest groups, and over 5 million people surveyed to find out what is it that they want to have for the next 15 years? Where do they want to be in 2030? Well, the result is not a strategic plan, but the result is a shared vision of humanity, a basis for a new social contract between the governments and the leaders and their people. This is something extremely powerful.
Yes, and so let's talk about that vision, because the 2030 agenda is a universal agenda for sustainable development, which means that it addresses all countries, not like the MDGs, the developing countries. So it's universal in scale for all countries. So how can we make sure that we do look for an innovative and new way to implement the SDGs and the new agenda instead of falling back into development routines, if you will, and thinking in silos?
I think the most important is probably to realize how it is that we even got here in the first place. Why did we actually manage to get such a universal agenda? I believe it was through the involvement and the participation of everyone. You know, this process set new standards in terms of the UN's reaching out and including civil society and other stakeholders in its policy debates and policy development processes. I think that is a new standard and there is no going back.
And this year we celebrated the 70th anniversary of the United Nations. And where do you see the UN's main task in supporting the agenda's implementation? And how and to which extent does the UN system need to be changed to be able to best support the implementation of the agenda?
We need to understand what is different in this agenda. And there are a number of changes, but probably the most fundamental one is that there is a shift of accountability from the relationship between donors and recipient, which was very much what the Millennium Development Goals was about, towards the accountability of the state towards its people. The state at different levels, not just the national, but also the subnational, the parliamentarians, the service providers. So I would say the strategic question that we have to ask ourselves as a UN system, but also throughout the development community is, are we strengthening that relationship between the state and its people? It doesn't mean a blind acceptance of everything the state does. But are we helping the state to provide better services to the people? And are we helping the people to better understand and better request these services? That's the first question. So are we strengthening the relationship between duty bearers and rights holders? The second question, which flows from this commitment to leave no one behind, which is fundamental to this new definition of sustainable development, in a sense, is who are we leaving behind? We have to start our strategic thinking by identifying the most vulnerable people, by understanding why they are vulnerable, what threats they are facing, economic, social, environmental, political threats that they are facing, and how these threats can be mitigated. So are we strengthening the relationship between duty bearers and rights holders? And who are we leaving behind?
So interesting times ahead of us, and good luck with the implementation.
Thank you very much.
Thomas Gass, thank you so much for joining us here today at the German Development Institute in Bonn.
Thank you very much.